Captain Cole Harrison sat in the dimly lit command center of the Ardent Fury, staring at the holo-projector displaying the images from the disaster that had unfolded. The data was stark. Transmissions from Earth were flooding in with urgent messages from the colonies on the fringe. A human settlement, isolated on the distant world of Pallas 6, had been completely obliterated. No survivors. Not a single distress call had been sent before the final transmission. The message from the Warak arrived shortly after the news broke. A single line. "Your kind is weak." It had come with a timestamp. An arrogant reminder that the Warak had been watching, observing, waiting for the moment to strike. Pallas 6 had been a peaceful farming colony, mostly families, with a few scientists and technicians who worked in orbiting research stations. Nothing that would warrant such an attack. And yet the Warak had sent their warships, their lethal bioweapons, and their brutal ground forces. Entire cities were razed in a matter of hours. Only charred ruins remained where humanity had once called home. Harrison clenched his jaw, the anger rising in him like a tide, threatening to drown his reason. He had seen death before, too much of it, in fact. But this was something else. An affront, an insult, to the people who had died on Pallas 6, to Earth itself. "You're sure about this, Cole?" Ortiz's voice broke through his thoughts, steady and sure, as always. Captain Jessica Ortiz, his right hand in every mission, every battle. The woman who knew when to push and when to pull back. The one human being who could understand the complexity of what was at stake. Cole didn't need to answer. His silence spoke volumes. For years, Earth had adhered to the Galactic Charter. For decades, humanity had played by the rules, treaties, diplomacy, and compromise. They had fought hard for their place among the stars, for the respect of the other races. They had worked to build alliances with species who saw humanity as something other than the violent, chaotic creatures they were. But no more. "Get ready," Cole muttered, his voice a low growl, the weight of his decision settling in like a dark storm cloud. "It's time to remind them what we are. Time to remind them who we've always been." He turned to face the command staff, all of them waiting for his orders. Their eyes were grim, but there was something else there too. Determination. They knew what was coming. They knew they were no longer about to act with restraint. Earth wasn't going to beg for peace anymore. Not after this. "Take us to Warak space," Cole ordered, "and tell every fleet in the quadrant, this is not a negotiation. This is the beginning of their end." As the crew began to move with deadly efficiency, Cole allowed himself one final thought. He hoped the Warak enjoyed their brief moment of victory, because the humans were coming. And once they were unleashed, there would be no mercy. The Ardent Fury cut through space like a predator on the hunt. Cole Harrison stood on the bridge, his hands clasped behind his back as the stars streaked by in the void, the ship's engines humming with a low, almost ominous power. The crew moved with a precision that reflected the seriousness of the moment, their faces tense but resolute. There was no room for hesitation now. Earth had drawn a line in the sand, and the Warak had crossed it. Captain Jessica Ortiz, standing at the communications console, punched in a series of commands, her fingers flying across the holographic interface. The fleet was assembling. A dozen ships, each one a lethal weapon, designed for one thing: war. The fleet was a mix of military and mercenary ships, handpicked by Ortiz for their ferocity. No more negotiations, no more pleas for peace. Humanity had been forced to this point, and now they would fight to prove that they were no longer to be underestimated. Cole watched her work, his mind already racing through tactical strategies. There would be no grand speeches, no calls for mercy. The Warak would not receive the luxury of diplomacy. They had shown their true nature when they slaughtered the people of Pallas 6, and now they would face the full wrath of Earth. "Prepare the fleet," Cole finally spoke, his voice cold, each word deliberate. "We're going in hot." Ortiz nodded and relayed the orders. The ships under their command would execute a tactical strike designed to cripple the Warrak's ability to fight back. Rapid, brutal, and overwhelming. The Warrak had underestimated humanity's capacity for vengeance. They had made the mistake of thinking Earth was just another soft, civilized race, content with trees and talks. They were wrong. Within hours, the Ardent Fury and its fleet emerged at the outer edges of Warrak space. They were met by a handful of Warrak warships, an attempt to intimidate, no doubt, but Cole wasn't interested in posturing. The battle began before their ships even fired a shot. Ortiz had studied the Warrak's tactics thoroughly, and their weakness was clear. They fought with brutal force, but they lacked the adaptability and tactical ingenuity that made humans so deadly. "Take them apart piece by piece," Cole ordered, his eyes narrowing. "Target their engines, then their weapon systems. Leave them nothing but ruins." As the fleet charged into the heart of Warrak space, the first salvo of weapons fire lit up the void. Human warships, with their sleek, efficient designs, tore into the Warrak ships with deadly accuracy. The Warrak responded in kind, launching waves of biomechanical drones that screamed through space, but they were no match for Earth's firepower. Ortiz's voice rang out through the comms, her tone calm but urgent. "Captain, we've got a big one heading our way. Warrak flagship incoming." Cole's lips curled into a tight smile. "Let them come." He gave the order without hesitation. "We'll finish this with one final strike. Everyone ready." The fleet aligned in perfect formation, and the Ardent Fury led the charge. The Warrak flagship was about to learn the price of underestimating the Deathworlders. For the first time in centuries, humanity was unleashing its true power. No rules, no mercy. The galaxy would soon understand. Earth wasn't just another weakling in the cosmic playground. The Deathworlders were back, and they weren't pretending anymore. The Ardent Fury sliced through space like a blade through flesh, its guns still hot from the first wave of strikes against the Warrak fleet. The flagship's hull vibrated with the energy of combat, the echo of explosions resonating through the vast emptiness around them. Cole stood at the tactical display, watching the wreckage of Warrak ships drift into the dark. Their retaliation had been expected, rough, desperate, but ultimately futile. The Warrak were primitive in comparison to humanity's well-honed killing machines. But Cole's gut told him something was wrong. Ortiz stood beside him, her face set in a tight, calculating mask as she tracked the movements of the remaining Warrak ships. "We've dismantled their perimeter defenses, Captain. The flagship is vulnerable. If we hit them now—" "No," Cole interrupted, holding up a hand. His eyes were fixed on the data streaming in from the outer perimeter of the battlefield. Something wasn't adding up. "It's too quiet. We've crushed their forces, but they're not retreating, and they're not calling for reinforcements. The Warrak don't surrender this easily." Ortiz frowned, a flicker of doubt passing over her face. She knew that Cole wasn't one to overthink things, especially in the heat of battle. His instincts were nearly always right, even when it seemed like the odds were in their favor. "You think they're setting a trap?" "I don't think. They're setting one." Cole's voice was low, dangerous. His fingers drummed on the command console. "But where?" Just then, the ship's alarms blared. "All stop." And the deck beneath them shuddered with the impact of something massive colliding with their shields. The energy readings spiked, far beyond anything the Warrak had been able to muster so far. Ortiz's fingers flew over the controls, trying to make sense of the data. "Captain, I'm detecting a massive energy signature coming from within the Warrak flagship." Ortiz's eyes widened as she realized the implications. It's not a ship. It's a weapon. A goddamn weapon disguised as a ship. Cole's heart skipped a beat as he realized what they were dealing with. The Warrak hadn't been desperate. They'd been calculating. The flagship wasn't just a warship. It was a bomb. A massive bioweapon designed to release a virulent, planet-killing pathogen across the battlefield. The Warrak had played humanity's worst fears against them, using their own attack on Pallas 6 as a bait to lure Earth into a kill zone. Cole's mind raced. If the weapon detonated, it wouldn't just wipe out their fleet. It would wipe out entire colonies in a radius that could cripple humanity's presence in the sector. The entire quadrant was at risk. "Brace for impact," Cole shouted, slamming his fist against the armrest. The crew scrambled to respond, but the enemy was already moving too fast. "Ortiz, can we disable it?" Her eyes met his, and for the first time since the battle began, there was doubt in her gaze. "Not without risking total detonation, Captain." Cole's jaw tightened. The Warak had underestimated humanity, but they had also prepared for this moment, expecting a fatal mistake. The Warak had thought they could play Earth's soldiers for fools, but now they had underestimated something far worse, a Deathworlder's instinct for survival. "Then we make our own trap," Cole said, his voice ice-cold. "Get me a direct line to the fleet. I want every ship to pull back to formation. We're going to lure that thing in close. Then we'll burn it down together." Ortiz's lips curled into a grim smile. "This is going to get ugly." Cole didn't flinch. "Good. We've been pretending too long." As the ardent fury accelerated, Cole Harrison's mind homed in on the singular goal: to outsmart an enemy that thought they had already won. He knew it would be dangerous. He knew they might lose everything. But the stakes had changed. Earth wasn't just fighting for survival anymore. They were fighting for something far more dangerous, their true place in the galaxy. And they would never back down. The ardent fur roared forward, its engines thrumming with brutal power as it led the charge. Cole Harrison stood at the helm, eyes locked on the massive Warak flagship that loomed ahead. The galaxy had never seen such a weapon, a grotesque hybrid of organic and mechanical, pulsing with alien energy and cloaked in a shroud of defensive force fields. It was the perfect bait. And now, Earth's fleet had fallen right into its trap. But Cole was a Deathworlder, and Deathworlders didn't fall for traps. They set them. "Ready all weapons," he barked. His voice was steady, but inside, his adrenaline surged. They had calculated their response down to the second, anticipating every move the Warak might make. The flagship's bioweapon was deadly, too deadly, but Cole had no intention of letting it go off. It had to be destroyed before it reached the critical phase. And if that meant bringing the full wrath of humanity down upon them, so be it. Ortiz's fingers flew over the control panel. Targeting systems locked. "Our fleet is ready for your command, Captain." "Give them hell," Cole said, his gaze never leaving the alien ship. "Focus everything on their engines. I want them disabled before they have a chance to deploy that weapon." The first volley of fire tore into the Warak flagship, a dazzling burst of plasma and ion blasts that lit up the void like fireworks. The flagship responded with its own barrage, massive, twisted projectiles that screamed through space, their jagged edges reflecting the horrors that lay within the Warak's mind. The flagship wasn't a ship, not anymore. It was a weapon of mass destruction, and it was coming straight for Earth's fleet. Cole's heart raced. The Warak fired again, and the ardent fury shook under the force of the impact. The shield alarms blared. Crew members gritted their teeth, holding on as the hull groaned with strain. But they didn't falter. They never faltered. "Captain, shields at 60%, Ortiz reported, her voice tight. "We need to do this now before they deploy the pathogen. Push through. Keep the pressure on." Cole snapped. He watched as the battle raged, every ship under his command executing perfect synchronization. The Warak flagship was crumbling under the assault, but it still wasn't enough. The flagship's core, its bioweapon, was protected by layers of defensive armor that seemed almost impenetrable. But Cole had one more move. "All ships, prepare for a full-scale orbital strike. We're going to push them into a corner." Ortiz's brows furrowed. "You're not suggesting?" "Yes." Cole cut her off. "We'll push them into their own weapon's blast radius. We bait them. We're Deathworlders, remember." The comms flared with a warning. The Warak flagship had begun charging its weapon, a final desperate strike. All ships formed the attack vector. Cole barked, his fingers clenched into fists. We will not let them win. We will never let them win. The fleet moved as one, synchronized in the face of annihilation. Earth's ships closed in on the Warak flagship, driving it back toward its own weapons threshold. The battle was chaos, explosions, energy blasts, screams of defiance. But in the midst of the madness, the humans held firm. Every instinct, every savage gene from their brutal world, sharpened into a single focused rage. Then, with a deafening crash, the Warak flagship reached its own weapons limit. There was no time to react. The entire ship erupted in a cascade of violent energy, an explosion so intense it rattled the stars. The shockwave tore through the battlefield, sending debris flying in all directions. The Warak flagship was no more. A cloud of vaporized metal and burning alien flesh now hung in the blackness of space. The fleet, battered and scarred, remained standing. Cole Harrison stood in the center of the bridge, his face unreadable. His heart pounded, but there was no triumph, only the cold satisfaction of survival. They had won, but only just. The galaxy would hear the message loud and clear. Humanity had unleashed the full extent of its wrath, and no one, no empire, no species would dare question them again. For the first time, Earth had reminded the stars of a simple truth. Deathworlders didn't need permission. They only needed the will to survive. And Cole Harrison knew that, from this moment on, no one would forget what Earth was capable of. The aftermath of the battle hung heavy in the air. The wreckage of the Warak flagship drifted slowly through the void, a silent testament to humanity's brutal response. Earth's fleet had taken heavy casualties, but they had emerged victorious. The survivors moved quickly to regroup, salvaging what they could from the wreckage while keeping a wary eye on the fringes of Warak space. The Warak might have been shattered, but their allies were still out there, waiting. Cole Harrison stood on the bridge of the Ardent Fury, his mind already shifting toward the future. The Warak had underestimated humanity's resolve. They thought they could use brute force and terror to defeat a species that had spent centuries struggling for survival. But Cole knew the truth. Humanity wasn't just a collection of people. It was a force of nature, an unstoppable will to survive, and if necessary, to dominate. Ortiz approached, her face tight with exhaustion, but her eyes burning with the same fierce energy that had driven them through the battle. "We've taken down their flagship, but I don't think the Warak will go quietly, Captain," she said, her voice steady despite the chaos around them. "They've already started rallying their remaining fleets. It won't be long before their allies move in." Cole nodded, his gaze fixed on the stars outside the viewports. "We'll give them something to think about. Prepare for Phase 2. We've already lost 1/3 of the fleet," Ortiz warned, "and we're a long way from home. We need reinforcements, or we'll be outnumbered by the time the Xidrex and Scorlin show up." "I'm counting on it," Cole replied, his voice cold. "Call in the mercenary fleets. Get the colonists to start prepping for evacuation. If the Warak have allies, we'll make them regret ever picking a fight with Earth." Ortiz raised an eyebrow. "Mercenary fleets. You think they'll follow our lead after the Warak were crushed?" "They will," Cole said flatly. "The galaxy may think we're civilized, but we just reminded them who we really are. Earth has always been a world of survivors. Now they'll see us as conquerors." Across the galaxy, news of the Warak defeat was spreading like wildfire. The battle for Palace 6 had been just the beginning, but the repercussions were already being felt. The Warak, humiliated and broken, were scrambling to regroup. Their allies, the Xidrex, a massive insectoid empire known for their cold pragmatism, and the Scorlins, a race of genetically engineered warriors, were already considering their next moves. Cole's comms lit up with reports from the mercenaries, hired soldiers from the farthest reaches of the galaxy, known for their ruthlessness and skill in combat. Some saw humanity's brutal victory as an opportunity. Others simply feared what would happen if they didn't fall in line. "Captain," Ortiz interrupted his thoughts, "we've got incoming transmissions. The HFY are demanding an audience with you. They want to discuss terms." Cole's lips curled into a grim smile. "Let them talk. But tell them this. We're not interested in terms. We're interested in dominance. Make them understand. If they want peace, they'll have to earn it." Ortiz hesitated for only a moment before nodding. "Understood." Cole turned back to the stars. Earth had done more than just defend itself. It had sent a message to the entire galaxy. We are not weak. We are not to be played with. And now the galaxy was waking up to the truth. Humanity's time had come. The days after the destruction of the Warrak flagship passed in a blur of tactical planning and relentless action. The surviving Warrak fleet, broken but not yet defeated, retreated into the far reaches of their home system. But Earth's war machine didn't slow. The message had been sent, but Cole knew the galaxy wasn't going to let humanity's uprising go unanswered. Diplomacy was a luxury Earth could no longer afford. The galaxy had drawn its lines, and now humanity would have to cross them. The HFY fleet arrived sooner than expected. A sleek insectoid armada, their ships moving with an unsettling precision, dropped out of hyperspace and entered orbit around the ruins of the Warrak homeworld. The HFY had always been cautious, calculating. They were known for their cold logic, and their response to humanity's show of power was neither hasty nor impulsive. They wanted to understand just how far Earth was willing to go. Cole stood in the briefing room, staring down at the holomap of the galaxy, now dotted with points of interest. Former Warrak holdings, strategic choke points, mercenary fleets who had allied with Earth's cause, and the scattered remnants of the once great Warrak Empire. It was clear the HFY weren't here for negotiation. They were here for calculation, to test whether humanity was capable of a sustained war across the stars. "Captain," Ortiz's voice broke through his thoughts. She was standing at the doorway, her expression grim. "The HFY have sent us an ultimatum. They're offering us terms. They want us to back down, to return to the status quo of the Galactic Council, or they'll enter open conflict." Cole turned slowly to face her. His jaw tightened as he considered the implications. "What terms?" "They want us to stay out of Warrak space and agree to a non-aggression pact. In exchange, they'll offer Earth protection against any other threats. A peace treaty of sorts." Cole exhaled sharply, his mind already running through the options. This wasn't about peace. The HFY had made it clear they were trying to contain Earth's aggression, prevent them from tearing apart the fragile alliances that held the galaxy together. But humanity wasn't playing the same game anymore. Cole wasn't interested in peace, not on the terms that HFY were offering. "We don't negotiate with threats," Cole said, his voice cold. "We don't run. We don't back down." Ortiz's eyes were filled with understanding. "You want to escalate the war." "It's already escalated," he replied. "We've made our stance clear. The galaxy's either going to bend to us, or we'll break it in the process. Either way, we win." The cost of victory had already begun to show. The Ardent Fury had suffered damage in the battle with the Warrak flagship, and other ships in their fleet had taken losses, some irreparable. But it was nothing compared to the toll the war would take on Earth. Every colony, every military base, was now a potential target. Every supply line was a vulnerability. The blood price of this new age of humanity had been set. The HFY might think they could cow Earth into submission, but Cole Harrison knew one thing for sure. The galaxy hadn't seen anything yet. Humanity had unleashed something far more dangerous than the HFY could comprehend. Something that couldn't be reasoned with, only feared. "They'll regret underestimating us," Cole muttered, as his eyes lingered on the star systems that dotted the map. "Prepare the fleet. We're going on the offensive." Ortiz didn't need any more words. She knew what was coming. Earth was past diplomacy. There was only war now, and humanity's thirst for vengeance and supremacy was only growing stronger. The blood price had been paid, But it would not be enough. Not until Earth ruled the stars. The first shot had been fired, and the battle was far from over. As Cole Harrison stared at the shimmering stars beyond the bridge of the ardent fury, the weight of what was to come settled on him like a storm cloud. The HFY had delivered their ultimatum, but he knew peace was no longer possible. They had pushed humanity too far. Earth had always been a world of war and survival, but now they had a taste of something even more dangerous: the will to dominate. He turned to Ortiz, who was standing at the tactical console, her face set in grim determination. "We're moving in on the HFY fleet," he said, his voice steady. "Full force. No hesitation." Ortiz met his gaze and nodded. "Understood, Captain. They'll be expecting us to negotiate, but we're giving them something else. I'll have the fleet ready for immediate deployment." Cole's eyes flickered across the data streams. Intelligence reports from colonies, mercenary fleets already gearing up for battle, and the silent but ever-present tension between the stars. The HFY might have been known for their strategic brilliance, but they had one fatal flaw: their overconfidence. They believed they could contain humanity, force Earth back into the shadows of galactic politics. What they didn't realize was that the more they pushed, the more they drove Earth's people into a frenzy. "Coordinate with the mercenary fleets," Cole continued, his voice rising with a quiet intensity. "Tell them this: we're not here to play by their rules anymore. This is our galaxy now. They can either join us or be crushed beneath our boots." Ortiz's fingers flew across the console, sending the message to the private fleets, who had already proven their worth in the early days of the conflict. Mercenaries, pirates, and outlaws, all united under one banner now: Earth's banner. They had no allegiance to the HFY or the Galactic Councils. They were only interested in power, and Earth was handing it to them on a silver platter. "We're set," Ortiz confirmed. "The mercenaries are ready. The HFY won't know what hit them." Cole nodded, his mind focused on the battle to come. He didn't underestimate the HFY. They were cunning and brutal, and they had the numbers on their side. But humanity had something they couldn't replicate: the unyielding spirit of a species that had clawed its way to the top of the food chain by sheer willpower. The HFY had never fought against that. "Deploy the fleet," Cole commanded. "Full offensive. We hit them hard, we hit them fast, and we break them." As the fleet maneuvered into position, Earth's ships, now reinforced with mercenaries and tactical precision, surged forward with deadly intent. The HFY ships, sleek and cold, awaited them, but they had no idea what they were about to face. They had expected a war of attrition, of diplomacy and containment. They hadn't counted on humanity's thirst for revenge, or their drive to never be under anyone's thumb again. "Target their flagship first," Cole ordered, watching the display. "Cripple their command structure and let the rest fall apart." The ardent fury and its fleet dove into the heart of HFY space, a hammer poised to crush their enemies. This wasn't just a battle. It was a declaration. Earth had awakened from its long slumber, and now the galaxy would learn the true meaning of fear. Humanity was coming for the stars, and they wouldn't stop until they had conquered them all. The stars outside the ardent fury shimmered like distant memories of a galaxy that had once looked down on humanity as little more than a passing storm. But now, Earth was no longer a whisper among the stars. The battle with the HFY had erupted into a full-scale war, a war that would redefine the balance of power in the galaxy forever. Cole Harrison stood at the command center, his face hardened by the endless days of conflict. The fleet had delivered on their promise, pushing the HFY into retreat, crushing their flagship with surgical precision. But even as they struck, he knew this was just the beginning. The HFY were ruthless, but they were not alone. The Scorlans, the merciless genetically engineered warriors, had already begun mobilizing in response to the destruction of their allies. "Captain," Ortiz's voice cut through the tension, "we've got a problem. The Scorlans are moving toward our position. They've rallied the remaining Orc forces as well. We've drawn them in." Cole's mind raced. The Xidrex had been a significant threat, but the Skorlans, they were a different breed entirely. Superior warriors genetically designed for one purpose: war. And they were coming, determined to avenge their fallen allies. But humanity had already proven it could fight, and win against impossible odds. "Tell the fleet to brace," Cole said, his voice calm, his mind already focused on the battle to come. "We're going to finish this once and for all." He knew the stakes. If the Skorlans and Warrak could unite, Earth would be facing a war on two fronts, one that would stretch humanity's resources and will to their limits. But Cole was certain of one thing: the galaxy had never seen a force like Earth. The battle lines were drawn, the stage set. The Skorlans arrived in a wave, their ships like massive predatory beasts, their engines glowing with deadly purpose. Behind them, the battered remnants of the Warrak fleet, now more desperate than ever, slithered into position. Cole didn't hesitate. "All ships, attack formation now. We make this a fight they'll never forget." The Ardent Fury and the rest of the fleet plunged forward, meeting the Skorlans head-on. Plasma weapons, kinetic blasts, and mass driver fire lit up the void, a symphony of destruction. The Ardent Fury weaved through the chaos, picking off Skorlan warships with ruthless efficiency. But the Skorlans were no easy target. Their ships were designed to endure, to withstand human ingenuity and firepower. But for every ship they lost, another was waiting to take its place. Ortiz's voice rang out as she relayed orders, her calmness in the face of the chaos a testament to her leadership. "Captain, we've got them on the defensive. The Xidrex are retreating. We've broken their formation." The battle was fierce, but humanity was not to be outdone. They fought like cornered beasts, unwilling to yield. The Ardent Fury took a hit, but it kept pushing forward, relentless. The enemy fleets were crumbling, their coordinated assaults splintering as Earth's forces cut through them like a blade through flesh. Then came the final moment. The Skorlan flagship, a towering, monstrous vessel, loomed in their path, its weapons charging for one last desperate strike. Cole's eyes burned with purpose. This wasn't just a fight for survival anymore. This was the moment when humanity would show the universe what it truly meant to be feared. "Target their command center," Cole ordered, his voice like a death sentence. "One shot. Let's end this." The Ardent Fury fired, the blast tearing through the Skorlan flagship's defenses. The ship erupted in a blinding explosion, its command center reduced to debris. The remaining Skorlan fleet scattered, retreating into the void, their morale shattered. In the silence that followed, Cole allowed himself a brief exhale. The war was over, but the galaxy would never be the same. Earth had risen from the ashes of its own history, and now it would shape the future. No longer would humanity be the hunted. The Deathworlders had become the hunters. The universe had witnessed humanity's fury, and now they would understand one simple truth: Earth was a force of nature, and it would never be ignored again.